From the heart of Wrexham, welcome to the Hope Street Church podcast. For more information of how to get involved, stay tuned until the end of the episode.
Happy Easter from me. I hope you've had a wonderful day. And this is a day to celebrate, isn't it? It is the time that we celebrate the most powerful truth that Jesus is alive. The central point of our faith we celebrate today. And I don't ever want to get tired of it. However many chocolate bunnies I have, however many Christian anthems we sing, I don't want to get tired of the fact that Jesus rose again. So today, let's just get straight into the passage. Let's read from Mark 16, 1 to 8. And it's a story of one of the first encounters, or the first encounter. Not with Jesus, but with the knowledge that Jesus has risen. So if you've got a Bible near you, or you want to check it out on your phone, it'll come up on the screens. This is what Mark 16 says. When the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome brought spices so that they might go to anoint Jesus' body. Very early on the first day of the week, just after sunrise, they were on their way to the tomb, and they asked each other, "Who will roll the stone away from the entrance of the tomb?" But when they looked up, they saw that the stone, which was very large, had been rolled away. And as they entered the tomb, they saw a young man dressed in a white robe sitting on the right side, and they were alarmed. "Don't be alarmed," he said. "You are looking for Jesus the Nazarene, who was crucified. He has risen. He is not here. See the place where they laid him, but go tell his disciples and Peter, he is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him, just as he told you." Trembling and bewildered, the women went out and fled from the tomb. They said nothing to anyone because they were afraid. What a surprising and slightly disorientating scene. And you don't kind of imagine that it will finish with this sense of the women actually fleeing from this profound news that the angel tells them, and like feeling confused and feeling afraid and running away. Now, I'm pleased to say that actually those women, they did encounter Jesus, that it came to the point of seeing the risen Jesus and trusting in him. But at this moment, that's not what we see. Mary Magdalene and the women with her, they weren't expecting the resurrection. They had seen Jesus killed, and all hope in Jesus, in who he said he was and what he was going to do, would have died along with him. And even though, if you remember, Jesus actually had said that he was going to rise again after the third day, or on the third day. And so if it was me, I'd have kind of listened out to that and got to the third day, and I would have expected to be camping outside of the grave, kind of waiting for this miracle to happen, and yet we don't see anyone outside of the grave. We don't see anyone waiting for Jesus to come out alive. The fact is, the resurrection was just as unbelievable for the first disciples as it would be for us today. No, the women went that morning to anoint a corpse. They expected a dead man to remain dead. But is the wonder of today. Because what they expected was not what they got. And when the women got to the tomb, they saw this angel. And this angel said 3 words that was going to change absolutely everything. And it would change everything forever. And he said this: "He is risen. He is risen." Just a few moments ago, we sang that song that says, then came the morning that sealed the promise. His buried body began to breathe. And they're profound words, aren't they? And if you imagine it, in the grave, when Jesus was buried and cold, suddenly this body began to breathe. The resurrection of Jesus is the single greatest event in the history of the world. And that simple message told by the angel on that morning has spread across the world and will be celebrated by like over 2.6 billion people today celebrating the same thing, that Jesus is alive. And it's good to remember, isn't it, that our faith is not based on Jesus' teaching. We don't follow him because he's got wise words that he tells us a good way to live. We don't follow him based on his healing miracles, no matter how marvelous they are. The reason that we know his name is because of the resurrection, the historical reality that Jesus Christ rose from the dead. Our faith isn't based around a historical figure. We do look back to the past, but we look back to the past to see the person we can meet in the present. He is alive. He is available to us that we might know the risen Jesus today. And I guess I wanted to ask us this afternoon is like, are we confident in this, the most important truth that you could ever know? Are you confident? Maybe you've come here today and you're not sure if you believe the claim that Jesus rose from the dead. And if that's true, I just want to say right at the beginning, you're in really good company. Because as we can see from this passage, that Mary and the women felt exactly the same. Many of the disciples, when they first heard the news, they doubted, they questioned, they didn't get it. And yet each one of them came to the place where they saw and encountered Jesus and came to follow him, and it changed their lives forever. If the resurrection isn't true, then everything we believe is just foolish fantasy. We might as well go home. Without the resurrection, Jesus is just another wannabe Messiah, someone who made promises but failed to keep them, a failed revolutionary that was killed by the Roman and Jewish authorities that he has threatened, and he's not worth following. But I have confidence in the resurrection because of three things that we can see in the Bible, three things that I've stolen from Alpha. But three things that give us confidence about the resurrection. Firstly, the empty tomb. Let's just consider for a moment. If Jesus didn't rise from the dead, where did his body go? The Bible talks about that when the women turned up early that first morning to this tomb that was guarded by Roman soldiers, this tomb that was sealed with a massive stone, and yet by the time of sunrise, when it was still dark, they turned up and the tomb was empty. What happened to the body? If the body was stolen by thieves, they wouldn't have left the grave clothes. Again, in another of the gospel narratives, it talks about that the grave clothes, the only valuable bit that the thieves could have stolen, was folded up and put in the place that Jesus had lain. If the body was stolen by the religious or Roman authorities, when the rumors of Jesus being raised from the dead started, then the easiest way to kind of quash some movement would have just to be bring out the body. This is Jesus. He's not alive. He's dead. I've got him here. Or if the body had been stolen by the disciples to somehow make up a resurrection story, would they really have spent the next 40 years, the rest of their lives, going around proclaiming that Jesus was risen? Those same men were misunderstood. They were persecuted. They were often martyred for their faith. Would they have given up so much on the basis of a lie? I don't think so. No, the empty tomb points to the risen Jesus. Secondly, the eyewitness accounts of people actually seeing Jesus, the real Jesus. In 1 Corinthians 15, it says this. This is Paul writing to the church in Corinth, saying the gospel story, and it says this: "For what I received, I passed on to you as of first importance, that Christ died for our sins according to the scriptures, that he was buried, that he was raised on the third day according to the scriptures, and that he appeared to Cephas," that's Peter, "and then to the 12. After that, he appeared to more than 500 of the brothers and sisters at the same time, most of whom are still living, though some have fallen asleep. Then he appeared to James, then to all the apostles," and then he goes on to say his own testimony. Now, in this passage, Paul lists all the people that have seen Jesus. He doesn't even mention Mary Magdalene that we're talking about in this passage. He doesn't mention the two that walked, that saw Jesus as they walked to Emmaus. But hundreds of people claim to have counted the risen Jesus. They saw him. They ate with him. They touched him. Can you imagine 500 people? Like, I don't know how many people are in this room. This morning, there was nearly 200 people in the room. But can you imagine multiples of us all seeing the physical resurrected Jesus? And can you imagine what effect that would have on Wrexham, on North Wales? We wouldn't be able to keep the story to ourselves. And that is what happened at the time of Jesus when 500 people saw Jesus. That story was passed on, and the world was changed. In this letter, Paul gives the names of those who had seen him. He's saying, if you don't believe me, seek them out. Many of them are still alive. I just wanted to underline, I said that he didn't mention Mary, he didn't mention the guys walking to Emmaus, but he mentioned this man, James. I don't know if you know who James is, but James is the brother of Jesus. How many of you have brothers? Okay. If your brother told you that he was God, would you believe him? Tia, what do you reckon? No, I've got two brothers. I would confirm. I definitely would not say and believe that my brothers were God. And that was the same with James. All the way through the Gospels, James is completely absent because James wasn't one of the followers of Jesus as Jesus was going about his ministry. He was on the outside of the group. He didn't believe. And yet, as soon as we turn into Acts, we see that James is present as the leader of the Jerusalem church. What changed? What would it take to be convinced that your brother is the Son of God? I would hesitate or not hesitate to say, I think the resurrection. Because in this passage it says, then he appeared to James. James saw his brother resurrected. Lastly, the transformation of the disciples. As we know, as you flick through the Gospels present quite a feeble picture of the disciples at times, and particularly around the time of Jesus' death on a cross. They were nowhere to be seen around the cross. Only a few women gathered with Jesus. They fled. They scattered. They were distraught. They were distressed. They were in hiding. And yet, after seeing the risen Jesus and being filled with the Holy Spirit, the church was birthed, and the world was forever changed by their testimony. Nothing could stop them telling people about Jesus. Nicky Gumbel uses this quote. He says that they moved from fear to faith, from alarm to action, from despair to hope. And again, that it is this change that we see within this transformation that we see within the people that encountered Jesus face to face, that we can have confidence that Jesus did rise from the dead. We can believe it because of the empty tomb. We can believe it because he appeared to people and there was testimonies in their lifetime. And we believe it because of the transformation of the disciples. And so this afternoon, Easter Day 2023, I want us to know, to take in deeply again, that we believe that Jesus is risen, that he has the power over life and death, that he can be personally known, that you and I don't need to walk this life on our own, but we have a living Saviour with us. And we don't come like these women do to the empty tomb from the starting place of the cross. That's what the women did. They had just been through the trauma of seeing their friend crucified. And then they came to the empty tomb. We thankfully stand the other side of the resurrection. And so when we look at the cross, we look at the cross through the resurrection. And that changes transforms the cross that we see. We have the privilege of approaching the cross in the light of the resurrection, in hope, with confidence, and in gratitude. And the resurrection proves that the cross has accomplished everything it set out to do. Because from that view on Friday, it looked like Caesar was in control. It looked like the schemes of the Jewish leaders had placed him on the cross. It looked like that the chance of a fickle crowd had sealed his fate, that the nails that pierced his hands was what held him on the cross. But from that Friday, the cross looked like the greatest tragedy, a plan gone wrong, the ultimate defeat. But the view from Easter Sunday is altogether different. That same cross is transformed from a sign of death to a sign of God's love. Because we see that Jesus was free all along, that he freely gave himself up for us. And he did it because he loves us. The only thing that could possibly hold God on a cross is his love for you. And all that the cross speaks of, and that would be a whole series in itself, is validated through the resurrection. That we, you and I, are reconciled to the Father. That that every sin and every failure that you and I have ever done or ever will be, every mistake, every bit of shame, every bit of guilt is dealt with at the cross, and that we can know that we are forgiven, washed clean, that God does not hold it against us, that we are free. That the power of death is defeated, that God suffered with us, God suffered for us, that we would know in our suffering that he is with us, that we are loved without measure. That ultimately is what we see from the cross, that we're loved. And finally, the resurrection also speaks to our future, because what happened to Jesus then will one day happen to us. We too will die one day. I know we kind of fight it in this culture, but we will die. We will be buried. But the good news of the gospel is that we too, like Jesus, will be resurrected. And just as death didn't have the final word for him, death doesn't have the final word for us when we trust in him. I don't know if you know, but the word cemetery, it was the early Christian writers which first used that word for a burial place. And the word cemetery comes from the Greek word koimeteron, which means sleeping place or dormitory. In other words, with calling that kind of graveyard place a cemetery, early Christians were declaring death is not the end. Death is only a sleep. There will be a time to rise again. Even in the naming of a place, even in going to a cemetery, we're declaring the good news of the resurrection. That Jesus raised, and one day we will be raised. That is our hope, and it's a real hope that sustains us as we face grief and loss of those that we love. It is a real hope as we face our own mortality in the years to come. The resurrection of Jesus is our hope. But as we know, the resurrection of Jesus doesn't just speak to life like eternal. It speaks to us today, because that same power that resurrected Jesus that day is at work in us today. That he comes and fills us with the same power that rose Jesus from the dead, and he is working, he's renewing, his restoration, he's bringing new life in our lives today. That life doesn't start when we die, it starts now. Resurrection life is flooding in and is working in you and I and in this world. And so finally, just the thing that I grasp from this passage is that the resurrection is good news to be shared. You know, when Mary and the women were in that tomb, the angel said to them, go and tell the disciples and Peter. Go and tell. We may not have seen the risen Jesus physically, but each one of us has encountered Jesus. And if we really know that he is alive and that he is able to be known, isn't it that the Spirit of God is whispering to each one of us today, just as the angels spoke to those women and says, go and tell, go and tell. But why did he particularly highlight Peter? Is that just incidental? But if you place yourself in the story, Peter had just denied Jesus 3 times. He had let down his Lord just as Jesus had said he would. And you can imagine the women running back from this encounter with the angel and saying, Jesus is risen. He wasn't at the tomb. We saw this angel and he said that Jesus was going to meet us at Galilee. And maybe Peter is there. And yet Peter knows that he's just let his best friend down. He knows that he's messed up, that he's failed. And so probably in his mind, maybe in his mind, he's thinking, okay, that's for you, but that's not for me. Because I have missed my chance. So I'm going to stay here and you go on. But God says through the angel and Peter, make sure Peter knows I want to see him. Because you've still got a place in the story of God. Because even though you messed up, forgiveness covers everything that you've done, even your failure. And God knows each of us by name. Maybe for us today, he's saying, go and tell the disciples and make sure Steve knows that this is for him. And Nathan, and Sarah, and Ugo, and Oscar, and Bowen. Because God wants for each one of us to know the good news that Jesus is alive, and that really does change everything. You've got a part to play in the story, that he has got resurrection life for you, that death doesn't have the last word physically, emotionally. He's got life and life to bring.
Thank you for listening to the Hope Street podcast. We're a church in Wrexham with a vision to be a people of hope, following Jesus and giving ourselves away to see Wrexham renewed. To find out more, head to our website, hopestreet.church, or follow us on social media.